Friends, this lecture is addressed to PhD students uh, in the fields of marketing and social sciences. I'm going to talk to you the common mistakes that PhD students make in their work. I have made some mistakes, and um, when I examine PhD thesis from good universities, state and central universities, and prestigious institutions from the country, I often find that PhD students need to be told about certain things. And this small presentation is on 12 mistakes that PhD students often make. So, and if you are a PhD student yet to write your PhD thesis, I'm sure that you will benefit from this lecture. And I'm going to share some slides on these mistakes, and they are here. The title of the presentation is "What is Wrong with Market or Social Science Research in India?" and 12 mistakes that PhD students often make. The first mistake is to think that they are going to do a pioneering work in something, in some field, and nobody has ever done any research on that topic. So in selection of topic or in selection of problem itself, there is a problem. Actually, remember that if you are doing something on which nobody bothered to work, it may not be worth doing. This may not be a good research topic. That is why nobody has taken it up. I always tell that to make a lasting contribution in your field of knowledge, you must identify the academic debate that is going on in your field. For a long time, it's better to do PhD thesis on a topic on which already a lot of literature exists, rather than selecting a new problem. But many students and even many thesis supervisors think that the student must study a new thing, new problem, new group, however insignificant from the point of view of adding to theoretical debate. Remember that the PhD work is not a consultancy work or a work of uh, journalistic kind. It's a contribution to academic theory in your field. So do not go by fashions or by desire to explore something very, very new. Some examples of wrong choices because of this desire to do something new are like somebody says, I want to study buying behavior among students of IIM Ahmedabad. The question is why? Why do you want to study buying behavior among students of IIM Ahmedabad? In what sense will it add to literature on market? Is it a good market research problem? What kind of theories can be tested in collecting data on buying behavior among students of IIM Ahmedabad? And why IIM Ahmedabad only? Why not all IIMs? Why not all IIMs and IITs? Like this. So identify a problem on which there is a long theoretical debate rather than because something is new or fashionable. And I often give example of this topic in sociological research that I got a PhD thesis actually from one university on the topic, a socio-economic study of carpenters of Mirzapur district of UP. And the claim was that although the group of carpenters has been studied in the past, but nobody has studied the carpenters of Mirzapur. So friends, unless there is some very pressing academic reason to study carpenters of Mirzapur, what is the need to study this? What theoretical contribution it will make to sociology of occupations? Remember, ask yourself whether your study of this study of socioeconomic um, uh, dimensions of carpenters of Mirzapur district will add anything to theory making in sociology of occupations. Uh, Already you belong to an international community of scientists in your field, and ask yourself what kind of theories are there in sociology of occupation and how will this study help. Or a demographic study of, I don't know for what reason, students of social sciences these days study women Gram Panchayat or NGOs, women NGOs. Um, uh, these studies, okay, sometimes government may require some studies of this type, consultancy projects may require studies of these types. But what is the theoretical contribution? So a demographic study of women Gram Panchayat members in Surat district of Gujarat. And these are the types of studies I get for examination. And first thing I laugh at, so why was this topic chosen? What will you gain out of conducting a demographic study of women Gram Panchayat members in Surat district of Gujarat, and that too without controls? Means without comparing the behavior of women Gram Panchayat members in Surat district with any other group. Long back, Durkheim said that sociology uses a comparative method. So if you learn something about IIM Ahmedabad students or carpenters of Mirzapur district, or women Gram Panchayat members in Surat district of Gujarat, it will be a meaningless study unless you are able to compare your findings with findings on some other comparable group. Another problem is that students seldom, our management and social science students seldom take interest in the social structure of their country. Even going by the ideas of the founding fathers of sociology, the researchers must take interest in the social structure of India. If you are doing a study in India, you must take interest in the social structure of India, which means you must be aware of trends in politics, sports, films, family, economy, and religion in India. India first, and then on what is happening in America, Europe, or China. If you are not interested in them, in Indian sports, Indian politics, Indian films, Indian family, Indian economy, you are not going to contribute to good social science in India. When we talk of great people like Habermas or Foucault or others, Baudrillard, and it's fascinating to talk about those people. These people were fully aware of political, social, religious, arts, family institution, and all other related changes in their country and in Europe. They, if they did not know anything about India or much about India, that did not matter. Similarly, if you are studying something in India, you must take interest in all aspects of Indian society. Then only you will be able to contribute meaningfully. You must watch films, you must take interest in politics, you must have some good understanding of history of various sports, family, what are the developments in sports, what are the developments in families, how films of our decade are different from films in 1990s and how they were different from 1950s. That will tell you in what sense is society changing? Economy, similarly, economy. In what way? You must know something about 5-year plans and history of rise and fall of growth rate of income of the country and the various policies that government of India adopted from time to time. I would suggest read fictional material. It's good to read novels. It's good to watch films, read newspapers and magazines. It's possible to publish by Indians in top-notch journals of the world on Indian problems if the work has a theoretical significance. And I have myself seen this, that we worked on several Indian problems and we could publish in some of the best journals of the world without spending much time on understanding the fashionable and contemporary writers of Europe. You are not a European organic intellectual like Foucault. You are an Indian social scientist. So complete knowledge, or as much possible, knowledge of Indian society, Indian social structure is important. Do not waste too much of energy in understanding the terms, lexicon used by European philosophers. Focus on theory in your field. And this focus on theory in your field, I keep on telling PhD students, this is what it means, that in exploring hypotheses in your specific field of inquiry, what kind of theories have been proposed in the past. I'm not talking about the theories of Durkheim or Spencer or Max Weber or Karl Marx. There are some very, very specific theories in your field of inquiry, and you must be fully aware of them. Another mistake is lack of understanding of what a research hypothesis is. The research problem must guide where, first of all, it's not necessary that all the studies have hypotheses. Exploratory and qualitative studies need not have any hypothesis. Scientific studies or quantitative studies or experimental studies need to have hypothesis. And if you have hypothesis, if you are doing an experimental or scientific study, diagnostic study, then hypothesis would be required. But do not have a large number of hypotheses. I have seen some PhD thesis in which the number of hypotheses was as large as 95, 96. Have only 3, 4, 5 major hypotheses. There may be some sub-hypotheses which relate to the different statistical tests, inferential statistics that we are going to apply in your study. But the major hypotheses are not too many. A bigger issue that I have seen, and I must tell you, is that your study requires a statement of your research hypothesis. And the most commonly written hypothesis in a PhD thesis of the form, there is no relationship between X and Y. Friends, this is a form of null hypothesis. We form this null hypothesis and we try to reject this at 5% or 1% or 0.1% level of significance to say something on the research hypothesis. And research hypothesis can be stated in 3 ways. One, that there is a relationship between X and Y. This is a weak hypothesis. It's weak in the sense that there may be empirical correlation between them, but it's not clear what causes what. There is a better hypothesis, X of X, Y, moderate. This moderate hypothesis, because here you have identified your dependent and independent variable. X is the independent variable or something which causes something, and Y is the effect. So X is the cause, Y is the effect, and this is a moderate hypothesis. A still better form of writing hypothesis is that increase or decrease in X leads to increase or decrease in Y. This is a strong hypothesis because it tells two things. It tells the nature of causality between X and Y, and it also tells you the direction of relationship, whether the relationship is positive or negative. You can write that X has a positive impact on Y, or X has a negative impact on Y. But certainly do not write that there is no relationship between X and Y. This is a null hypothesis in statistical sense, while the research hypothesis is supposed to be the alternative hypothesis. There is also a confusion regarding objectives, research questions, and hypotheses. And in most theses I have seen, the research questions are simply the hypothesis, same number, same language, only thing that they have been written in interrogative sentences. This is completely wrong. And friends, objective is the overall goal that you want to achieve. And research questions are those very specific questions, maybe 4 questions, 5 questions, 10 questions, whose answer will lead lead you to achieve your goal of your research. So objectives, hypotheses, and research question, they're all different things. And in your PhD thesis, I would like to see that your hypothesis is written in the form of a research hypothesis, not null hypothesis. And a better hypothesis is that X has a positive impact on Y, or X has a negative impact on Y. So both cause and effect are specified, and the direction of relationship is also specified. Fourth mistake is that there is a thinking among scholars that a study is successful only when the results are statistically significant. My view is, and that this is the way I was trained in my post-graduation, that we are prepared for acceptance as well as rejection of our null hypothesis. And we are already ready with theoretical explanations of both acceptance and rejection. We do not make any manipulation in showing that our results are statistically significant. All results are good contributions. Even rejection of your hypothesis, rejection of your research hypothesis, or non-rejection of null hypothesis is a significant contribution. The design of a well-designed study is itself a contribution. Others will follow you. Others, those who will work on similar problem, can use your research design. Think of a design of a study aimed at exploring farmers' protests in India. Also think whether it is valid internally and externally. Internally means in a logical sense, whether you want what you want to conclude, whether it is possible to conclude that without making any logical fallacies. And externally means that the findings of this study conducted in, say, Western UP is also, the findings of this study conducted in Western UP are also applicable to farmers' protest in Maharashtra. That is externally valid. Also, you may use a number of theories. You can use theoretical triangulation or a combination of theories for a single aim. But one study, your PhD study, must aim at one thing only. You must not have multiple goals of research, and you must not have multiple theories for attaining multiple goals of research. Be specific. Go in depth, and try to attack one research problem in one research. Also, I have seen that PhD students start making questionnaires and schedules on their own, guy tells them that prepare the schedule now, and they after 2 months, 3 months, uh, um, they come back to supervisor and show that this is the schedule that they have made. Now, please read questionnaires and schedules developed in your field of research in the past research. That is why I keep on telling that past research, presence of researches in your field of inquiry is very, very important. And I have always prescribed to students to go through the interview schedules of good studies done at the national and subnational level, such as Human Development Survey, National Family Health Survey. Now NFHS 5 has been completed, or longitudinal aging study in India. To learn from, learn about structuring an interview schedule. Learn about what should the first page of your questionnaire or schedule look like. Even write, how to write the title of the study, how, where to write the name of your department, how to write the introductory part, what to tell about the research to your respondents, getting their written consent. All these things are important part of questionnaires which students often ignore. So please read some questionnaires or schedules used in the past to study your type of problem. Suppose I am studying happiness. So I know that hundreds of or thousands of researches have been done on happiness. They have developed different scales to measure happiness. What is I must apply my mind to selection of one of the scales used in the past. Maybe if my problem requires, or if my field requires, or if my subjects require, I can make some small modifications. I can adapt the existing scale to new circumstances, but I must at least go through the existing scales to measure happiness. Now, another mistake that students make is that they think that the empirical results are conclusion. There is a difference between empirical results or empirical results are findings, and conclusions are theoretical. It is not enough to say that brand of an air conditioner and domestic violence are correlated. You may do a study of relationship between air conditioner brand and domestic violence. It will be, to me, it will be a nonsensical study, but maybe if there is a theory connecting the two, and if in the past some significant scholars have worked on this problem, then it may be okay. Look at their theories, and look at their questionnaires, look at their design, and develop a design to study this thing, and explain your findings in the light of the theoretical debate. Otherwise, this is a meaningless kind of empirical correlation. Identify, and what does theoretical explanation mean? It means that you identify the various linkages through which the brand of an air conditioner and domestic violence are related. Is the relationship symmetrical? Do both the factors affect each other? Or it is asymmetrical, that domestic violence affects air conditioners, or air conditioners affect domestic violence? What? Identify dependent variables, independent variables, mediators, and moderators. And always remember that findings are statistical findings and observations, and conclusions are theoretical. Conclusions are the theoretical positions that you have. Another mistake, a common mistake made by students is non-use of standard terms in the way they are defined in literature. If I am working on the issue of productivity or happiness or job satisfaction, or buying behavior, I must use the standard definitions of these things. These are standard terms in literature. You cannot use the terms like correlation, efficiency, stress, proposition, IT services, CSR, joint family, empowerment, informal workers, etc. in your own way, because your readers already have a certain understanding of them. You must use the technical terms in the technical sense. Many sociology students particularly make this mistake of not looking at technical definitions of what they are studying. It may be family, it may be state, it may be economic inequality. Try to use your terms, your major research terms in technical sense. Use the standard definitions. And if you want to deviate a little somewhere, you think researcher has to be a creative person, and you think that some definition, some operationalization of some concept, that happiness is defined in a certain way in the past, I want to define in a new way. Then you define, you clearly state that in the beginning, that I am using the construct of happiness in this way, and this construct differs from the earlier scales or concepts or constructs in this way, and I have adapted on the basis of a pilot study. Okay, so this is very important that you use technical terms or the major terms of your research in a technical sense. A big problem, a common problem in PhD thesis in both management and social sciences that I have learned on the basis of the PhD thesis that I have examined, is that students just write something about sampling. It's very common to write that they are using random sampling. They do not know the difference between random sampling and incidental sampling. They write theoretical sampling without understanding the technical meaning of the term theoretical sampling or purposive sampling. That I am using a purposive sampling. What is the purpose for which this sample is used? And purposive sampling has certain requirements. You must have a good knowledge of variations in the population. Then only according to your purpose you can select a sample. So before saying that you have used a particular form of sampling, for example, purposive or theoretical sampling, read the best literature on sampling. See the sample designs of some of the most known studies of NSSO studies, say consumption survey or migration survey or survey of diseases, health or ill health, or other types of survey. I think even when you are not conducting a research on consumption, it's good. It is still good to see the sample design that NSSO used in consumption survey. Then you know how actually a sample is designed, what are the different aspects in deciding about whether to go for probability sampling or non-probability sampling, and what are the various types of probability and non-probability sampling procedures, and in your kind of situation, which sampling procedure fits the best. Learn about self-weighting scheme. I have not seen any PhD thesis in which although the students have used some kind of purposive or quota sampling, but in arriving at estimates for the larger population, they have used weights. If you are not using weights at the time of estimation, then use a sample design with self-weighting. NSSO does this, NFHS does this, and you must read the sample design part of some good studies before deciding the sample design of your study. Do not say that you have used a random sampling unless you are able to define target population, sampling frame, and use the rules of probability in selecting your sample units from the sampling units. It's very common for a student to say that I have selected 300 women, and they have also given Cochrane type of formula to determine sample size. The formula which was used for a random sampling procedure, uh, and something which I just don't like, because this sampling formula will always give you a figure of 300 to 400, and because the nature of sampling error is such that as sample size increases, then sampling error, which is 1 upon square root of n into something, declines in the form of negative exponential curve. So that apart, unless you have made a complete list of all the women in the city, and you are going to use probability, rules of probability, either through random number tables or pseudo generated random numbers through Excel sheet or other computer procedures, you have not used a random sample. So be very careful. Study sample designs of earlier studies, and then only say something about what kind of design is best for your kind of study. Another problem I see, use of latest statistical or qualitative techniques which are in fashion. Today in the field of management, almost all the students, if they are working, if they are using quantitative methods, are using structural equation model without understanding what structural equation model does, without understanding its algebra, without understanding its assumptions, without understanding what kind of data does it need, and without understanding the differences between structural equation model and other models which provide the alternative choice. Like, what is the difference between exploratory factor analysis, confirmatory factor analysis, path analysis, multiple regression, or ANOVA, MANOVA, MANCOVA? You must know the difference. If you are using grounded theory, you must know who coined the term grounded theory, and to study what was grounded theory used. Then later on, who other significant authors or researchers used grounded theory to study what, in what context, what were their findings, what were they trying to achieve. Just because these terms look fashionable, structural equation model or confirmatory factor analysis or common method variance, do not use common method variance unless you, just because your SPSS or AMOS or other packages allow for this. You must know why you are using a particular technique. Do you know what all the technical choices are? In what situations was a technique used by its proposer and then by others in the past? What were the findings? What are its assumptions? You must have some basic understanding of the algebra used in the common method variance and confirmatory factor analysis if you use them. A very common mistake that I have found in thesis in management departments is that it is on the same sample that exploratory and confirmatory factor analysis were used. They should not be used on the same sample. You must have two different samples, or you must divide your sample into two parts. On one part, use exploratory factor analysis, on the other part, use confirmatory factor analysis. So you must be absolutely clear about the assumptions, requirements, and applicability and algebra of those techniques. Then only you apply those techniques. Now, friends, all PhD research must start with a theoretical proposition. And that's why I keep on repeating that review of literature and understanding that there is a long academic debate in some field, and there are controversies. Some researchers, some important researchers, or in papers published in prestigious journals, some researchers have one position, other researchers have another position, then only a problem is worth studying. If everybody is saying the same thing, suppose all the researches that you have seen say that there is a negative relationship between uh, income and fertility, then and studying the relationship between income and fertility is of no importance at all. Or if the conclusions are obvious, or if everybody can anticipate what the conclusions are going to be, then the study is useless. Start with, so there is an academic debate. Start with a theoretical proposition. Theoretical proposition has two terms, theoretical and proposition. So your proposition of relationship between two concepts comes from a particular theory. So you have theoretical proposition with which you start, and you end your PhD thesis either with the agreement of that proposition, or you disagree with that proposition, or you make some modifications in that proposition and give your explanations. Remember that findings are not conclusions. Rather, they lead to conclusions. F is significant at p equal to 0.05 is a finding, but together with its explanation, X has a positive or negative impact on Y is a conclusion, and this X has a positive or negative impact on Y, its regions must be stated. Those regions, along with saying that X has a positive impact on Y, along with the regions, is the conclusion. So all good PhD theses always start with a theoretical position, a proposition, and always end at agreement or disagreement or modifications in that proposition with which the students start. Another thing I must draw your attention to is the language problem. I have not seen in my life any PhD problem which is written in proper English or proper Hindi. Mind it that thesis is ultimately written in words. Thesis is written in a standard language. It may be written in English, or it may be written in Hindi or some other Indian languages. It's okay. You can write a PhD thesis in Tamil or Telugu or Kannada or Bengali. That is not the problem. But in whichever language you write, you must know that language. You must know its idioms, metaphors, and you must know writing grammatically correct English. You must be good at the language. And to be good at the language, you must read some literature in that language. Have you read any literature in that language? You are writing PhD thesis in English, but have you read any literature in English? Have you watched, can you understand if you watch a movie in English? Or if you are writing your PhD thesis in Hindi, have you read any fictional or non-fictional material in Hindi? Have you read something about Sur, Tulsi, Nirala? Have you read Kashinath Singh? Have you read the contemporary writers? Have you read PhD thesis written in Hindi? Because if you read a language, if you read the fictional and non-fictional material in the language, then only you develop capability to write well your thesis in a particular language. Ask yourself, have you ever written an article in that language before? If you have not developed the right ability to write a small article, 2-page, 3-page, 10-page article in English or Hindi, how can you write a PhD thesis running into 250 to 350 pages? So you must be good at language. Language is very important, very, very important. When an examiner reads your thesis, your language leaves the first impression. So before writing the thesis, you must have a prior experience of reading and writing in your language. Commonly, we say that before submission of the thesis, a student must uh, submit some papers and make presentations. I will say that is not enough. If you are writing in English, you should also read some good uh, uh, poetry and prose works in English. If you are writing in Hindi, read some fictional, non-fictional matter. Read some Hindi Sahityakar, read poems, read prose, read essays, read Namavar Singh, read Kasinath Singh. Uh, uh, reading of and also read newspapers, read magazines, watch films. Right in the beginning, in one of the slides, I said that you must have a good understanding of the society in which you are working. If you do not have a good there is no great European philosopher who did not have a good understanding of their country, of society of their country. Our research scholars, just to show off their knowledge, keep on debating what is habitus, what is field, what is the meaning of cultural capital in Bodri. ठीक है, it's good to have some understanding of foreign writers, but understanding of social structure of your society is more important, and that comes not simply by reading books in sociology, economics, psychology, or management sciences, or in politics, but also by reading literature and watching films and having interest in sports. So then only you can make a lasting contribution. And another issue, I would say, that breaking of ethical norms. Breaking of ethical norms in India is very common. That's why some Indian data, even from national studies, are not taken very seriously, because there is a feeling that the quality of data is very poor. And there is a whole branch of knowledge which deals with the quality of data. Now, National Data Quality Center has been established by Government of India, and guidelines have been prepared. So that is one. Right, collecting right quality of data. Then plagiarism is another. Plagiarism is very common. Plagiarism is so common that some of our great thinkers, writers, philosophers, social scientists, and market researchers have been labeled charge of plagiarism. Professors are labeled charges of plagiarism. And plagiarism means not copying from somewhere without giving credit. There are elaborate rules of what comes under plagiarism. I'm only making a point. For details, you must talk to your supervisor, and you can go for internet search and understand what all is included in plagiarism. But plagiarism should be avoided. I know I was in one ethical committee in which and a PhD student had taken chapter of a senior student, from the thesis of a senior student, although that chapter simply explain a methodology. It's like at the end of algebra book, you explain the basic operations of matrices. In an advanced algebra book, toward the end in appendix, you explain simple rules of matrix, addition, multiplication. But even there, although that chapter had, that appendix had nothing to do with this problem, with data collection. Everything was okay and fresh and contributed to literature. But the thesis was sent back. Some people even opined that thesis should be rejected because the student had copied one portion of one portion of the thesis from the thesis of a senior student. Even giving try to be original. Each and every sentence in your thesis should be written by you yourself. If you want to, if there is some very important quote, there are rules regarding how long a quote can be, whether you can quote somebody, whether you can quote 2-3 lines, or you can quote 10-15 lines, or certainly you cannot quote 50 pages. So even if you are saying that some other researcher, that Marx says this, and you quote 20 pages from Karl Marx's Capital, that is not right. That is unethical. Remember that ethical rules certainly add to the level of difficulty of the work. People break ethical rules for the convenience or ease of the work, but to follow ethics is to gain both in knowledge and recognition, and it pays. It pays in the long run. It even pays in getting a job. If the image is that you are a hardworking student, if the image is that you are an honest student, if the image is that you follow ethical rules, if the image is that you are a hardworking student and you are a scholar, you know the theory in your field well, and you have meticulously collected data, and you are familiar with the sample design, research design of studies in your field, then you also get good recommendation letters from your teachers, supervisors, and that helps in getting it. That also that shows that confidence, that personality shows in selection committees. Share the credit with all those who have helped you in conducting your research. In papers based on your thesis, acknowledge the university or the institute where you have worked. If you have worked in IIM Indore, write that, write in acknowledgement, write the help that, write that IIM Indore provided you the facility for writing this thesis. If your thesis, if your work is sponsored by some donor, Indian or outsiders, if you have financial support from someone, acknowledge that financial support and make the thesis supervisor your second author if you are writing a paper based on your thesis. It is unethical to force a student to write name of the supervisor first, but it is equally unethical to not write name of the supervisor if the paper is based on your PhD thesis. I keep on telling the students all these things, but I still find that even my own students do not listen to me. And the last point is, I said I will identify 12 mistakes, and I do not want to make the presentation very long. Once you get a job, develop a long-term plan and work on different aspects of a chosen problem, preferably your PhD problem, for 10-20 years. Nobody does that. So you have worked on one thing, and then when you become a faculty member, assistant professor somewhere, then for professional reasons, you keep on shifting. You keep on working on different problems. This is one mistake that I have also committed in my life. That for professional reasons, one reason being that I wanted to produce PhD students so that I could show on my CV that I have guided so many students. So according to interest shown by PhD students, I kept on shifting my interest. That is, that doesn't pay in the long run. All the great thinkers, researchers, social scientists, management experts are those who have devoted their lifetime to study one single thing. Great anthropologists are those who have spent their lifetime, or at least 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, 20 years in studying a tribe or in studying an island. So as far as possible, or okay, if you just want to be an ordinary professional, it's okay. But remember that by doing consistently and holistic work in one area, one domain of your field, you become an expert. Rise in academic hierarchy from assistant professor to associate to professor, professor to professor, senior professor or HAG, or getting awards does not mean that you are an expert or a scholar. So you may become the senior most professor in your field in some university or institute, but you will not be known as an expert or as a scholar, which I suppose all PhD students in the beginning dream of, that one day you will be a big expert, or one day you will be a great scholar, and future scholars, future PhD students will be referring to your work, and you will be well known in your field. You cannot be a well known person if you keep on shifting. Thank you. This is all I wanted to say. And as I said, that my reason behind this presentation is simply altruistic. As a student, I have made some mistakes, and as a faculty, as a professor also, I have made some mistakes, and as a researcher, I have made some mistakes. And when I examine works of other students, other candidates from universities, state and central and prestigious institutions, I say including prestigious institutions, some of the most known of the institutions in the country, I find that students are making errors in writing objectives, hypotheses, research questions, in sample design, in selection of statistical techniques, or in writing grounded theory without understanding clearly what the purpose of grounded theory was. So if you are using this term in qualitative research, this term grounded theory has become very popular. First of all, I should tell that the proposers of grounded theory wanted to correct some errors or some limitations of qualitative approach. That is why grounded theory was developed. It's not a qualitative approach. So read something who proposed this technique, and to study what, and later on who others applied this technique, in what circumstances, in which countries, to study what kind of problems, and what were their inferences, what were the limitations of their inferences. If they had used experimental or survey method, could those limitations be overcome, etc., etc. Then, so whatever you do, PhD is a very difficult work. Do not take it lightly, and then only you will be able to make a good contribution in your field of inquiry. I have given you my email address. I would be very happy if you ask some questions to me. Thank you.